This is Texans TV. Texans Extra Points, presented by Community Coffee, official coffee of the Houston Texans. Also sponsored by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Houston Texans. And by your Houston area Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas. And by Amagi, the official business bank of the Houston Texans.
Let's go for what we got, man. Hey, wait, no, what's the three? Here comes pressure. He's going to go down. Touchdown, Houston. Rock and roll.
Hello, and welcome into Texans Extra Points. We hope the tryptophan has worn off, your Thanksgiving was joyful and merry, and you're ready to talk a little Texans and Dolphins. My name's Drew Douherty. I'm the host. We got Brooks Kubena from the Houston Chronicle. Good to see you, Brooks.
You as well.
John Harris, a.k.a. Battle Red John Harris, showing both Brooks and I up with that jacket. Looking good. You feeling good?
I'm feeling very, very well, Drew. Thank you very much. But I know Brooks was wearing this. He pulled it off a lot better than I could. But
You want to switch?
no, this is way too big.
Oh, okay.
Way too big.
I'll work into it.
This is also a family program of sorts. So, today on the show, we've got one burning question about the offense. Plus, we've got an over-under defensively to think about, and then Texans to watch, as well as keys to a Texans victory. It can be done. Yes, it can happen on the road in Miami against a very good Dolphins team. But we start things off with, obviously, changes at the quarterback position. Davis Mills, Kyle Allen, that is what's happened. Big week in regards to that. So, answer this question, guys. Other than score more points than the opponent, the Texans offense must do this moving forward to get a victory. It's such a broad-based question, and I took out that points part because, yeah, that's why.
Sure. How about gaining yards on any of the first three drives? I mean, it's been something that they've had problems with the last couple of weeks. Just have some sort of efficiency on offense. That's come a lot at the quarterback position. Kyle Allen being a person who can maybe get the offense going. Pep Hamilton, he's been given a lot of reassurance from Lovie Smith that they can get things figured out. Whoever is at quarterback needs to be able to get the ball downfield beyond 15, 20 yards, and we'll see if they're able to at least get that tendency out of the way to get things going and score. They're more likely to throw an interception on their first three drives than score, so that says a lot about the offense right now.
All right, so moving early and getting it going early, that's his. What's yours?
Things have to happen quicker. Everything seems so slow. They're slow getting out of the huddle. They're slow getting up to the line. They're slow making adjustments. They're slow in the reads. Everything just seems slow. They've got to put a defense back on its heels a little bit. So whether it's picking up the tempo, regardless of whether they do that or not, whether they go no huddle or go no huddle NASCAR, I don't care. But they've got to do things faster. You watch other offenses and it clicks. They got to the huddle to get to the line of scrimmage, boom, away they go. That's the way this has to go. And at that point, the ball has to come out of the quarterback's hands faster. It's got to be quicker. It's got to be more decisive. And the trust and communication have to be there. And I go back to the game against Washington. There's a play that the Texans used to run with Matt Schaub and Andre Johnson. It's an automatic on the backside of a run with that hard slant. And Brandon Cooks is blocking and Davis Mills is throwing the football. You got to have trusted communication all the way through this offense. And you've been together long enough, those things shouldn't be happening. So you got to be clean communication. You got to be clean up front. You got to do things faster and quicker. And then, as Brooks said, you've got to move the ball in the first quarter.
Okay, let's stick with this. Run the ball better. You didn't do it last week, and that's kind of been an anomaly. You've been able to run the ball for the most part with Dameon Pierce in weeks before that. What do you change this week to make it happen?
Well, you've got to make your standard blocks. You can't just let defensive linemen swim move you. 4 of the 5 guys on the offensive line within the first 2 series of the game there was a swim move by a commander, and they were just falling on their face. You've got to do the simple things up front. You can't just have a swim move get you beat, and then that guy's attacking the running back. And look, they've faced some dudes on the inside. John Allen might be the best of them all, but they've faced some dudes. It doesn't get any easier. Christian Wilkins, Raekwon Davis, Zach Seiler's played better. The guys on the outside are really good. It's not going to get any better, but you got to make the blocks that are inherent in a good run game. You were making them early. Now you got to go back to doing that. You can't just whiff on a line of scrimmage. Those are TFLs waiting to happen.
Hey, out on the edge, Nico Collins, is he progressing the way you've liked to have seen him progress?
I think so, but we just need more opportunities. We need more opportunities. I want to get to a point with Nico where, hey, we need a first down, and they know where the ball's going. Everybody knows where the ball's going, and he goes and makes a play. That's the next step for Nico, to be that guy on every key third down. Throw the ball to 12 because he's going to win. We've seen other receivers in this building do this over the life of the franchise. that's where he has to take his game to.
Tight ends wise, what's got to happen moving forward, you think, that area?
Well, they've liked what they've seen out of Jordan Akins recently. Brevin Jordan has been sidelined the last couple of games. You need more productivity whenever you have multiple tight ends in the game. Beyond Jordan Akins, O.J. Howard hasn't had much productivity as a pass catcher since the very first game. 2 touchdowns there. Whenever they're in, if they're able to get more blocking with those guys, great. But that pass game needs to come out of that, and it has to be from someone other than Akins.
Yeah, you bring up passing. Let's talk about passing scheme effectiveness. And the guy doing that is the dude over here in the red jacket, John Harris. It's all part of this week's Telestrator.
After a rough first half, the Texans offense got a little bit going with a well-designed crossing route here that you're about to see. Now, how did this happen? How did it work? There are a few things to look at here on this catch going across the middle. First of all, looks like the Commanders are playing cover 4. So they're playing, it looks like quarters. So they're going quarter here, quarter there, and a quarter there. That's what it looks like. What happens is Bobby McCain, the nickel, he ends up running with Chris Moore down the field, which turns out to be very advantageous. So I don't know why exactly they did that if they're playing cover 4. If it were cover 2, these guys would have probably squatted a little bit, and they would have shut down that crossing route. Either way, what happens when Chris Moore takes off, he goes. That leaves a big void over here, so it just takes a little bit to get to it. And if you can get to it, now look, there's everybody running this way, and he's got his back going with Chris Moore. Because of that, once the ball is caught, now there's nobody over there. He starts in here. Now you got a long room to run here. It's a very well-designed play, taking advantage of both the Commanders' coverage, but also potentially a mistake in the coverage. Why this safety goes down the middle of the field, don't really know, but it pays off because it left a lot of room over here for Davis Mills to find an open wide receiver. Gets Miami. They've got to find that. Maybe not that particular route, but take advantage of open areas, get rid of the ball, and get it to as many receivers as possible that can make plays against the Dolphins.
Here's the snap to Davis and floats the ball to Cooks, left side across the 45, 50, left sideline, the 40, the 30, there's traffic, the 25 before he's spun down by Forrest. And the Texans get a big play to Brandon down to the 21-yard line.
Next Gen Stats presented by AWS. It's been around since 2016, and Jerry Hughes has 8 sacks so far through this many games. That's the second fastest, only to J.J. Watt in that span. J.J. did it in 2018 when he was an all-pro defensive end. Douherty, Brooks Kubena, John Harris. Let's talk about the defense. Hey, Jerry Hughes has started out like a house of fire. He's been one of the bright spots there, but another kind of bright spot on the horizon as well is Christian Harris, linebacker, the rookie, getting lots and lots more action. How important is he, though, moving forward? What do you see? Well,
he's incredibly important. You're talking about a front that's a part of a defense that's on track to give up 3,000 yards rushing for the first time in its history. So he has to be able to play well. In his terms, he's been missing tackles at rates at a high level with linebackers. He's been playing better, played better on Sunday against the Commanders. He's starting to progress, didn't have a full training camp, went in to miss the majority of the first bit of the season. So if he can improve, his progression can be very influential because of his speed, how he can match up with different receivers, running backs coming out of the backfield. Just his knowledge and knowing where to be in the defense can make a big difference because over his time, he's not going to miss that many tackles as he gets into games. We're starting to see a progression for him. So all the things they're counting on in a Lovie Smith defense typically go back to whether a defender can react right, make the right decision, and be in the right position. And he's starting to do that more often.
And with all that in mind, and knowing all of the draft picks ahead for the Texans, as well as all the cap space as well, does that kind of magnify his importance in what he might be able to do even better with a little bit more talent around him?
Absolutely. But you know what he's got to do over the last 8 games? He's got to become the alpha. He's got to be the dude on defense. When teams are now looking at this defense, they go, okay, 48 is pretty good, man. We got to at least account for him a little bit. And he's taking over as that particular guy on this defense. And we see a little bit from Jalen Petrie in some sense, but when you're the linebacker in this defense, you need to be the alpha on this defense. And I think he's got it in him. At Alabama, Henry To'oTo'o took over as soon as he got there. And so Christian played next to him But Toto was kind of the guy that got everybody lined up. He was kind of that guy. I think Harris has that in him, and I think it's got to come out over these next 8 games. He's got to be the guy that steps to the forefront and says, me. Follow me, boys. And once they get more guys that do follow him or that line up alongside him and say, follow us, that's when this defense can start turning around.
You just said got to, and the Texans got to get more takeaways. They haven't done it this year like they did last year. And this game last year, around about the same time, these two teams were both 1-7 when they entered, and Miami's taken off like a rocket ship since. And that game featured 9 turnovers, 9 takeaways, whichever way you want to look at it, glass half full, glass half empty. But they combined for 5 and 4 on each side. So the over-under for this one, just for the Texans, 1.5 takeaways. They go over, they under that on Sunday.
They better go over. They've got to steal a couple of possessions in this game. I don't care how they do it. But I'm going to go over just because I want to see it happen. But I don't care if it's a fake punt. I don't care if it's a surprise onside. I don't care if it's a fumble on the punt return. I don't care. They've got to steal at least a couple of possessions because, A, gets the offensive confidence. Kyle Allen's that guy. He's going to get a few more reps in series. You're also keeping that Dolphin offense on the sideline, which you absolutely have to do. So you have to run the football. We'll get to the keys later, but I'm going to say over.
Okay, how about you?
I'm going to go under. This is an offense that is one of the best in the NFL. You have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who are probably going to go over at least 1,500 yards each. The Texans in the secondary have been taking the ball away from quarterbacks and offenses whenever they're confused. This is not a Dolphins team that I think is going to be confused on Sunday. I think they're going to have the upper advantage for most of the time. Jalen Petrie was big on turnovers early in the year, had 2 interceptions for a bit, almost had one against the Commanders, but I don't think they're going to be in position to do that.
Yeah, it's been remarkable. Tagovailoa's got 18 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. He has been exceptional with the ball and with ball security. Okay, cornerbacks not named Stingley this year have, complete that sentence.
Well, I think Steven Nelson's been solid. They both needed, the Texans going into the offseason, Levy Smith said they needed to get better at cornerback to play football they wanted to, and they've done that. Nelson's been a big part of that. You look at the guys that Nick Casero's brought in the last couple of years, I think Nelson's on the top of it now. He's been able to get out of a free agent. So he's played well. Desmond King has done more than he's supposed to, at what he's been expected of. He's been a career nickel safety, so to be able to step out and play decent football is what they'd want out of him.
All right, good stuff. We got to go to break, but before we do, we've got some Texans trivia for you. Since they're playing the Dolphins, which Texan scored the very first TD in franchise history against Miami? Happened back in 2003, and we'll have the answer for you a little bit later on in Texans Extra Points. Coming at you from the Ford Studios, this is Texans Extra Points with Drew and Brooks and John. I've got a 2-parter for you guys. A, is Tua Tagovailoa the NFL MVP? And B, where would Tua be without Tyreek Hill? You go first.
It's Patrick Mahomes.
Okay.
And I think it's fascinating because I think you're asking the wrong guy as MVP.
Yeah.
Because I think Tyreek Hill might be the MVP.
That's why I did that.
Yes, very well done. Because Tyreek Hill's impact isn't felt at just Tua Tagovailoa. We talk about Jalen Waddle, right? Houston Episcopal, great player. Last year, 104 catches. How many yards per catch did he average? Now it's my turn for trivia.
Okay, what was it?
9.8.
It's almost double that now.
Well, you just stole the punchline. Thanks, Drew. That's exactly what it is. And why? Because of the presence of Tyreek Hill. They can beat you with catch and run. They can beat you with deep shots. They can beat you with daggers and catching deep intermediate routes. They can do all those things. They're making life more or easier for Tua Tagovailoa. Now, I give Tua credit for coming back. He should be in the conversation. But the MVP of the league is Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes is your guy. Okay, what did you think about that question off the top?
So this highlights something that I think is interesting in how football, I think, has changed in the last 10 years. You're looking in the top 5, top 10 picks, you see a lot of offensive tackles in history, but when you look at teams that are saying, okay, let's go and trade a lot to get a big playmaker at wide receiver. Think of the Bengals, how they spent a top 5 pick on Jamar Chase when a lot of people thought that a guy that like Joe Burrow getting sacked all the time needed an offensive lineman. Well, you add another big element to the offense that gives them more options downfield. That gives them a chance to make a decision quicker that is explosive, help out the offense. And when you add those together in a guy like Tua Tagovailoa, who a lot of people wondered whether he'd be a long-term option at quarterback. Now you're asking even a question of whether he'd be MVP. So you think about it, you apply that to the Texans, you think about other teams that are in places where they're trying to build around. Think about adding wide receivers and how much that might play a difference in whether you draft them higher, secure more picks for those, adding them into the building. I think that's a larger conversation, what you're starting to see in the NFL going forward.
And how about the maturation of Waddle? I mean, this is just springboard of that. He talked about basically how it's doubled in yards per catch. I mean, it's so impressive what he's been doing. And it's not a huge surprise. I mean, you saw this when he was at Alabama, but it's just fun to see for them.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
At Alabama, this is the receiver we're seeing in 2022. I think what was even more fascinating was the fact that last year he had to convert his game and change his game to be a different guy because they didn't have the time to throw. Tua was not where he is now. They didn't have this Mike McDaniel offense. He adjusted in 2021. He is now playing at an Alabama level in 2022. This is what he did at Alabama, and it's really paying off for the Dolphins.
You know, I think perhaps the even broader question you ought to ask is who's more valuable, McDaniel, Tagovailoa, Waddle? I mean, it's an interesting way that he's constructed this offense and gotten it going. Because you had in the run game what he's been. I mean, we didn't even bring that up.
The best opportunity you can have in the team is to not know where your success comes from. When you ever get a lot of good pieces together and they all work and function, it's a good deal. Whenever I covered LSU in 2019, people trying to distinguish whether it was Joe Burrow, Joe Brady, whoever, it's a good situation to be in.
Yeah, it's a nice question that you got to ask about yourself. Another question that we like to ask is Texan to watch. Who's your Texan to watch on Sunday in Miami?
The center. Whoever the center is, whether it's Scott Quisenberry or Jim Morrissey, I don't care who plays at center, it's the center. Because that player is going to have to go against Raekwon Davis. Raekwon's a freak of nature. And if this running game wants to get going, the interior's got to be better. I think Kenyon's taken a lot of slings and arrows. Kenyon also missed a lot of training camp, not all of training camp, and I think that's set him back a little bit. Kenyon's going to be fine, but it's not going to get any easier. But he needs some help from that center. So I'm going to say the center for the Texans offense.
Okie doke. How about you?
Well, that's a dark horse. I was going to go behind the center. Quarterback has been such a bad deal for the Texans this year, and if they need to get anything going offensively, it's got to come from that direction. Kyle Allen getting a chance. We'll see how it goes. If it gets any better.
All right, you two are going center, QB. I'll just stay right in line with them, and I'm gonna go a little old man river on you because in my day I was a rookie broadcaster back in 2009, and there was a rookie running back named Arian Foster. He was wearing the number 27 back then, and when he went to Miami, he busted loose. It was his breakout game, had almost 100 yards, but he scored a touchdown or two, and that was a glimpse of what we would come to see over the next 4 or 5 years. So, Dameon Pierce, that is my Texan to watch. We need a big game from him. We need a bounce-back game from the rookie. He's got to get those tough yards. He's got to get those easy yards. He's got to get in the end zone and keep these chains moving, because these two smart guys to the left of me have talked about the need to keep Miami's offense on the sidelines. Dameon Pierce can help you do that. And you can help us by sticking around after this break and watching Texans Extra Points when we get into keys to a victory. Don't go anywhere.
Texans Extra Points, presented by Community Coffee, official coffee of the Houston Texans. Also sponsored by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Houston Texans. And by Mattress Firm, the official sleep partner of the Houston Texans.
Welcome back to Texans Extra Points. Earlier in the show, we asked you who scored the first touchdown in franchise history against the Miami Dolphins. The Texans won that first matchup back in 2003, 21-20, behind 5 Chris Brown field goals and this touchdown by 2003.
Okay, I'll just say Dominic Davis.
Andre Johnson.
Good guesses, both of you. Corey Bradford,
Corey
78 yards from David Carr. Corey Bradford could fly, and he's one of the all-time underrated best interviews on the team. Real funny guy. You're a funny guy, too, Brooks Kubena from Houston Chronicle.
Okay.
You can be. I've seen the sense of humor. You're very funny as well, John Harris of the Sidelines.
It's the best thing you've said to me all day. Thank you.
I talked about your Battle Red sport coat, man. Come on. This is the part of the show where we get into keys to a victory. We'll start over there with you, John. 2 things the Texans must do to unlock a dub.
Okay, we're going to nerd out on this one offensively.
We've done that before.
Yes. Miami will play different versions of nickel, and everybody hears nickel. Oh, they're playing the pass. No. The Texans have to figure out how the Dolphins are playing nickel because Washington played nickel against them with 5 down linemen and 1 linebacker. So everybody was covered up front and they couldn't run the ball because they couldn't win those one-on-one battles. So if Miami goes to that version of nickel, the Texans have got to be able to win those one-on-one battles to be able to run the football effectively. So offensively, they got to figure out that nickel front and be able to block it in the one-on-ones they have to win. Defensively, I said this on Telestrator, nothing cheap, nothing deep. They cannot give up anything cheap downfield. It's a lot easier to say than do, but they cannot give up deep balls to Tyreek and to Jalen Waddle. They can't give up 25-yard in routes, deep digs and things like that either. But they can't give up the deep route because they're not communicating, and those guys just run by you because safety's expecting the corner, etc. They can't have any busts in the secondary. Nothing cheap, nothing deep against Tyreek and Jalen.
Okay, Brooks?
Well, we can see instances when the Texans' offense figures things out and goes on a roll, like in times when they did against the Raiders, and they still don't win. I mean, this is a situation where a team that can play its very best and still be beaten by a much better team that just is better in all phases. So they need an ugly game.
Yeah.
They need rain. They need to be able to run the ball. They need a lot of turnovers. They need the Dolphins to play.
You just asked for rain, and that's the guy that's going to be on the sidelines
Hey,
reporting
I had
the
4 rain games last year, bro.
You'll be okay. You'll be fine. It's not waterproof. You'll have something to talk about afterward, and it'll be all right because they have Dameon Pierce, and I think they favor the way they play football. They can play an ugly game, and if that works out, they can control time of possession, keep that offense off the deal, and if they can get to under pressure. I know that Jerry Hughes has his high sack number, but they invested a lot in a lot of defensive ends. Their pressure rate isn't as high as it could be to sustain that long term. They need to make that a priority and win an ugly football game.
Okay, those are good ones. You got to answer the haymaker if you're asking me, which means Miami is going to hit you pretty hard with Waddle, with Hill. You got to bounce back. You got to be able to, A, limit that damage, or B, if they do score, you got to come back and answer a score by running the football with Dameon Pierce. I said it earlier in the show. He's my Texan to watch. That's what I'm going to go with. Answer the haymaker and run the ball. John, Brooks, love being with you. Hope you guys had excellent Thanksgivings. Hope yours was as well, and we appreciate you joining us here on Texans Extra Points. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. So we'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.